Welcome back to Untitled Minnesotan. Today we're going to talk about the Condor primitive camp knife. And so I had a previous video just showing you kind of the out-of-the-box thing, and now I'm actually going to run a few specs with you, not all of them, you can look them up online, but I'll run you some of the specs that I care about. And then I'm going to process just a little bit of wood, make a couple things, and just get a general feel for it, tell you what I think. Now that all I've done to the knife is I sanded down just some of the micarta corners before I ever used it because I knew it was going to suck without sanding those. Now that I've sanded those, I feel like we can process a little wood and get a feel for the knife. There we go. That's the Corona saw with me today. I suppose I have to do the obligatory Photonic Test. Somebody would be unsatisfied if I didn't. And honestly, since this is a Scandi and it's a new steel, it probably makes sense to test it at least a few times, just to double check that it can do it. Most knives, it's just fine, but Scandis can be hit and miss. This limb is pretty rock solid and it has plenty of knots, so it's a fair test. So because it's thin, some people would think it would bind up more, but if you're using appropriate size logs and you're not trying to baton like something giant that's way too big, I think it's going to do just fine. Slips through the wood. There's a little bit for my fire. I'll do one more piece. I don't really care to do more than that. So I should have an idea after this. Alright, so for that little bit, I'd say for vibration, sometimes that's an issue with knives, is you get a lot of vibration in the handle. Nothing. There's no vibration. I just didn't feel anything. It was actually pretty good. The micarta could maybe help with that a little bit, about not transferring vibration. Yeah, it felt pretty good. I already got the micarta dirty, so that was like half a day and I already had it dirty. Spine, of course, held up fine, and finally the edge. No problems, no bends, nothing like that. That wasn't huge pieces of wood, but it was very hard wood and it had plenty of knots. Put a little more stock in that than it probably looked like. That was good. Of course, the finish is going to come off right away, like every time. I don't care about that. I like knives without a finish, even 1095. It's got a nice sharp spine. Let's, sundown is going to be pretty soon. Let's make a fire. Throw some sparks on it real quick and make sure that it works well. Might have to wait till next time for me to throw some sparks with rocks. I gotta find some. By the way I like to carry this during the winter time is in a jacket that has a hook on it like this, which would be an easy thing to make. I like doing this. I have it on the inside, kind of close to me. That way when I lean over, it's not always falling out. I can zip it up a little bit and keep it retained. And I just don't want this big chunk falling out of that leather sheath because it's just a pouch. So. All right. Curious if that's a little too green, maybe. Let's find some good feather sticking wood. All right, so it can definitely make feather sticks pretty sweet. Let's throw a couple out here and then get this going. I'm actually going to make one more piece out of this. And this is a really hard piece of wood, actually. And remember, with the things that I'm making here, they just have to be functional. They don't have to be pretty. So those are the kind of feathers that I make when I want to transfer fire from a small feather stick to a big one. I make feathers like that, and it helps burn the stick up a little better. And if I want to make fine feather sticks, so of course it can make wispy little feather sticks too, and that was not hard at all. I'd say because this is thinner than a lot of knives you use, it might take a little retraining, and the fact that the handle is different, it's a unique handle, so definitely makes those just fine. There you go. So it sends sparks just like you would expect 1095 to send sparks. Pretty well. Right, so I said I would give you some of the specs on the blade. That handle, it's good stuff. Now that I've taken that sharpness out of there, I can pretty much hold it in all the ways I like to hold a knife, work with them. I chopped with this a little bit earlier, by the way, and it definitely didn't bend or chip out or anything. The 1075 versions I've had, just doing the kind of chopping I was on greenwood, they bent. And so that 1095 might have been a good deal for Condor to invest in. Let's see, so for thickness, the thickness looks about to be, oh, that's really close. Oh man, that's really close. I'm trying to give you a good read here. It does change a little bit from spot to spot, so I'll just go right in the middle. Right in the middle, how about that? And it's about a little over 3/4 inches thick right in the middle, but it does get wider at other spots. Hair under an inch up towards this area for thickness. Hair under an inch, and then in the back it's the same actually. Just a hair under an inch of thickness. So that's pretty good actually, when you consider that a lot of knives, they're not even that thick. They're not even 3/4. A lot of knives that are in this price range, so that's pretty good. The handle length overall is 5 inches. The blade length is also, no, that's not right. Hold on. Blade length is 5 3/4, but I'd call it 5 1/2 of usable length on this because it does have this little bit here that you can't use. I'm going to sharpen that up and get it to that full 5 3/4 though. So it's a very well balanced knife if you look at it that way. Let's see here. There's the balance point. That really doesn't matter too much to me, but if it's a knife that I'm going to do everything with, it's going to be kind of a utility knife. I do want an even balance. So I want to be able to chop a little bit, but I don't want it to be so blade heavy that it's hard to carve with. It's unwieldy. The thickness, let's see, it's a lot of people do thickness of spine in mils, so I'll put it in millimeters. So I think that's 3 millimeters thick, which is great. The broadness of the blade is just under, it's just under 1 1/2 inches actually. So you can see there's a broadness against my finger. Don't know how else to really compare it. I have a folding knife with me. There's the Cold Steel Ultimate Hunter. So again, the blade is the small part, but the handles are about comparable. I don't have a weight for you. You'll have to go online to do that kind of stuff. But the overall length of the knife, let's see here. Overall length of the knife is going to be 11 inches. So from tip to tip, 11 inches. It's a little bit bigger than some guys like to carry. In fact, a lot of times I like to carry a fairly small knife, but I'm just finding a lot of the things that I do, I always kind of need a backup, so I'm going to try out the bigger size for a little while. And again, the handle was the main thing. And this, so far, it's only the 3rd day that I've used it, so far is light years better than every other knife I've owned for a handle. Now that I've sanded down, jeez, the micarta. Oh, kind of interesting. Let's make some notches. That little bit of chopping power is nice when it comes to knots as well. Just a little extra oomph and weight to get through them. Definitely the knife is comfortable in hammer grip. I'm still playing around with 2 places where I hold my hand to see what's the most comfortable, but there are some convenient places for my finger to have some memory and rest in. My whole thing is, though, I want my hand as close to the edge of that knife as possible, because that's the full fulcrum of your power, or the full balance of your power is closest to the edge, closest to your first finger. That's why I'm going to bring that blade edge back. It's a pretty hardy piece of wood, if you can't tell, and it can take some good sized chunks out. It's a thin knife, I would expect it to. So it's a broad knife, and sometimes that can be undesirable in making notches, just fitting into places, but it's also a thin knife, so it's got some advantages. We'll see how this works for, let's just do regular old square notch, or rectangle notch if you call it that. pretty broad, and you know, it's going to be a lot broader than your regular outdoors knife, and it really doesn't seem to hinder me at all. Sometimes controllability, it makes it a little unwieldy if it's too broad. It's right on the edge for me for fine tasks. It doesn't really seem to bother me too much, so. I just don't want to slip and cut myself in a broad knife doing fine work. Sometimes you have a higher chance cutting yourself. All right. So there's a quick, kind of dirty square notch out of some pretty hard elm. Let's just do a regular old hook pot hanger type notch. You know, you gotta push real hard on a hard piece of wood like this. Elm is pretty tough stuff once it's dried out. You gotta push hard, and if you have an uncomfortable handle, like pretty much anything made by Tops, it's not nice on your hands, and after only a couple minutes, you'll know if it sucks. Man, I like the thinness of this blade quite a bit. Excited to see how the edge holding is though, because edge holding is like everything. It's why I went from the 1075 to the 1095. I just didn't like the 1075 edge holding. Needed a hair better. Yeah, that guy digs in there. Okay, so there's a pot hanger notch in my hand. Red from holding a knife, but not bad. No hot spots. The closest thing is just me figuring out exactly where I want that first finger, but notches were just fine. Let's see what else. How about cross batoning a little bit? Let's just try that on a hard piece of wood. This is a small baton to use, but I suppose I'll go for it. Well, that's not too bad. Look at that bite. That's pretty good, actually. That's what I wanted. That's why I wanted a thin knife. I wanted something that could dig in deep when I asked it to, and not bend. That's important. That sucker's pretty much all the way through. That's pretty good. Let's see. So I'm not great at feather sticking kind of in midair, and I'm not sure if my camera's even focused or not, but I'll try a feather stick just hanging out here, just so you can get an idea of how thin of feathers you can get with this thing. It's just easier than other knives to get a thin piece. It's broad, it's got that shearing power, it's very, very sharp right now. It's got a high Scandi grind, which I really like. I'm actually taking such thin wedges sometimes that it's just blowing off. Yeah, not hard at all. Well, I worked with a knife for another couple hours, and now the sun has gone down completely, and it always looks lighter. I don't know why that is. It always looks lighter on the camera. but it's kind of dark out now, so I'm just gonna mess around and not film too much more. I'll have more videos to come on that blade for sure, more use videos. Try to lighten it up here. But I made just some clips on a birch bark piece here to hold some things that I need to keep dry. So I usually set my mushrooms that I'm going to use, my fire mushrooms. I usually collect all those and then I put them in something like this and put a little flap over the top of this, which I still have to make. And that keeps it dry from the snow, rain, or whatever else, bugs. And so I'm going to continue that, but so far, the sheath is definitely just okay. See if I can get out of smoke here. The sheath is definitely just okay. I don't love it. I don't hate it. But the blade itself, pull that out. The blade itself, focus. Man, it's hard to do stuff when you're alone. I need a photographer. Cameraman. Anyways, blade itself, I really like it. I really dig it. It fits my extra large size hands very, very well. Probably my favorite Condor I've ever picked up and held in hand. And everything today so far, it's done what I needed to. I'm starting a shelter here. I just put up a frame today. So I'm gonna bring a tarp out next time and have another place to hang out here. But it's done everything I needed to do. I really like the blade. I really like how sharp the spine is. The handle is fantastic. It's nice and thin. Blade didn't bend. And we have used it for several hours now. It's still very sharp. So I'm either suspicious or impressed. Yeah, I'm going to use it for another 6 or 7 times without sharpening it. And we'll just see how that 1095 does. If it chips or rolls, anything like that. And we'll find some rocks to spark it off of and see how well that works with the char cloth. But so far, definitely a fan.